All right, welcome and thanks for joining. Today we're going to be doing our kind of introductory to the objective personality system. And so, hey Liz, I see you just joined. Thank you, and I apologize for the link mistake. Basically, what I want to do each week is have a different topic related to personality typology and look at it kind of through a human design lens, not exactly through a human design lens. I mean, that will be fun, but I think first, literally just looking at the personality typology system as it is. And then what this will allow us to do is to decouple some of the stereotypes we have, like projectors are this way, manifestors are that way, quad right means this, individual circuitry means that. There are so many really stereotypes that are about particular people with particular personality types. And others don't relate to those stereotypes, and then they might say, am I living my not self because I don't relate to this? No, it's just a different personality. So my goal here is to really study each personality type system. We're going to be beginning with the objective personality system. Hi Marissa, you're going to be my helper because you probably know a lot more about the objective personality system than I do, and so please jump in and correct me. Yes, you made it. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining. And so basically, my goal here is in this first class, we're just going to look at the objective personality system. We're going to kind of stick with it for a while. I would eventually like to look at Enneagram. I'd like to look at any personality system that people are interested in. But I want to stick with the objective personality system for a while because it's very rich, it's very deep, and we can essentially learn it and then try it out. And so one of the things I want to do, if anyone's up for it, is pick someone to type for next week, and then we all independently try to assess their type and see what we come up with. And I'll make sure that those who missed this class also have an opportunity to do that. I'll post it on, in the Discord and so on. But essentially, my idea is just let's learn this system, and that will help us overcome some of our biases about projectors are this way, manifestors are that way, and so on. I had a great conversation with Teresa Brenneman earlier today, and we were talking, I was kind of doing a mini typing session for her. We think we figured out her type. And it was fun because I was just going through what they call the coins in the objective personality system. We were talking about each coin, and we're going to do some of that today. And basically, as we go through okay, I guess she wasn't able to join. Hopefully we'll be able to. But anyway, as we go through the coins, basically, you can try to type yourself with those coins, and then you can kind of think about them. I'm also happy to talk with people outside of this, and you can kind of bounce off of me what you think your type might be. I'm happy to talk through that. But what we found when I was talking to Teresa was that so many of her coins are so opposite of the way she'd understood individual circuitry and the right variable. And this was mostly because the way Ra explains individual circuitry and the way Brayton explained individual circuitry are both heavily biased by Ra and Brayton's individualist tendencies of their personalities. So they were basically describing their personality and conflating their personality with individual circuitry. Now, Teresa has a lot of individual circuitry and some right variable placements and so on, and she really didn't relate to anything about it. Like, she's a very collaborative person who really loves working with other people and loves connection with people and is very energetic and all these things. Now, there are certain aspects that, of course, she relates to, like the individual melancholy and things like that. But I just think that one of the values we're going to get, first of all, we're going to get a whole new vocabulary out of studying the OPS, is what it's called, the objective personality system. And then we're going to be able to sort of decouple some of what we may have attributed to the human design body graph to the personality. Now, before we do that, I just want to make one point, and this is something that Teresa brought up last week in the open radio. She was, and actually was kind of brought up today again by James Alexander. There are these interesting intersections where we start to use some of the same words, and it might sound like we're replacing human design, or basically what came up during open radio was Teresa was asking, now how then do you see the human design body graph? Do you see the channels as more overarching themes in the personality day to day, or the channels day to day and the personality is overarching, or any of that. And I said, no, they're both always active all the time. And how I see the layers, and I think this is very important because we're in a human design group as well, is just I see the channels, or in the case of reflectors, the temporary channels that are made, as the life force energy. And life force energy is always moving. Life is movement. Life is change. I mean, if you're a reflector, you know this more than anyone, that your life force energy is changing on a daily basis. And what you have energy for and where that energy goes is constantly having the plug pulled, and then a new plug is plugged in. And that's really what it is this massive switchboard where plugs are being unplugged and plugged in, and you're kind of going through life, having access to different energy at different times. And actually that's true for all of us. I mean, yeah, if we have channels, then we have consistent access to that life force energy, but still, projectors are plugging into people, generators are, their big auras, getting activated in all sorts of ways. Manifestors have these transits that give them sometimes long-term transits for multiple years. I mean, basically, the body graph is showing what activities we have energy to do without quitting. What do we have energy? What actually gives us, the key here is the term life force. What makes us feel younger? What makes us vitalized? What brings us to life, really? If you have tribal circuitry, say you have a defined ego and tribal, and somebody really compliments you and they really mean it, and they really show you how much you've supported them and helped them, you convert all of that gratitude into life force energy. You literally seem younger after that. I don't, or I temporarily will, or I will bring awareness to that, but I won't necessarily have a built-in mechanism that converts that energy into feeling younger and being more vital. The story I told on Thursday, so I'll just kind of touch on it, but I think this is important. So I really learned what it was like being in a relationship with someone with a defined ego, and how that defined ego can literally convert certain kinds of human activity, like gratitude and being cherished and being supported and supporting someone and then being appreciated for that, into life force energy, and literally feel younger and more vital and more alive. And that was when I was dating Jenny V, who some of you know from the HDHD conference and so on, and we were working on projects together, and I, being an undefined ego myself, I didn't realize what a big deal this was. I was just nagging her and criticizing her and saying, why isn't this done yet? And people do that to me, and I'm like, okay, yeah, whatever, I'll get it done. And it doesn't bother me. It doesn't make me feel older. It doesn't age me prematurely. I'm just kind of okay, yeah, that sucks. And then I just, do what I do. But in her case, it was actually having the adverse effect of she would literally just go slower and dig her heels in more and be like, you're going to criticize me for this? You're going to nag me for this? Really? After all I do, And then meanwhile, she was working on her Gates Around the Wheel. And her Gates Around the Wheel is this great series she did of collage art. And she'd post them on Instagram each week, or every time the sun went into a new gate. And I was a little resentful because I was like, we're supposed to be working on this other project, and you're just working on this thing? Is that really, is that essential? Is that really important? And sure enough, though, she would post it and get 150 likes, and she would just be beaming. And I started to realize, this is me bringing my awareness to my undefined ego and bringing awareness to ego energy. I could see that she literally shriveled and aged when I criticized her and didn't show her my appreciation. And that after getting 150 hearts and a whole bunch of comments of saying, oh, I can't wait, I want a poster, I can't wait for the book to come out, she was glowing and radiant and looked 10 years younger and was just so deeply fulfilled. And I was like, wow, that is tribal support recognition in action. She's a 4426. She's creating things for the tribe. Literally, she has more life force energy and more vitality. She's more patient and kind and generous and has an easier time in the world and all of this stuff when her ego channel is being recognized and appreciated. That's what the human design level does. The human design level is how the mechanics of the life force energy work. The personality reincarnates again and again and again in different vessels, in different body graphs. You're a reflector this time, you might have been a generator last time, or a manifester. And, you're a projector, you might have been a MG. I mean, all of these different lives we have are so many different ways for our soul, or whatever you want to call it, the personality crystal, to achieve its purpose, to take the next step in the soul's evolution. And each life is one step. It's just one step in that evolution. So that's how I see the personality, is that the personality has incarnated in a body graph with particular restrictions, limitations, particular life force energy, particular ways of operating in the world, and that you have everything you need to fulfill your purpose. The personality is not the enemy. I mean, even human design doesn't really say that. It says the mind is the enemy, and they're not the same thing, as we saw in our base theory study. The personality is the passenger. The personality is just witnessing and observing the mechanics, and they are mechanics that will help the personality to achieve and fulfill its purpose, what it came here to do. And its purpose is really to get out of the way of the life force so that the mechanics can lead it to doing what it, I mean, it's not the only purpose. Like for Ra, his purpose was to spread human design. His purpose was to have the encounter with the voice. I feel a strong sense of purpose through doing the High Desert Human Design Conference and doing these classes with you and doing signposts and all of it. So I guess that's all I'm really saying, is that it's not that the personality is the enemy. We're not getting rid of the personality. We're simply educating the personality. And part of that education of the personality is learning what the difference is between the body graph versus the passenger. Now, I will say, to make it a little more complex, that we do have personality activations in the body graph. And so these personality activations, of course, are things that the passenger plugs into and identifies with. So obviously there's a little bit of a conflation there. But when we're studying personality typology, we are not studying the personality activations of the body graph. That's still the apparatus that the passenger is plugged into, so to speak. What we're studying is the eternal passenger. We're studying the thing that's been around since the Big Bang. We're studying the actual personality crystal that is the passenger experiencing the form. And I see Emma and James have joined. Thank you so much. So I'm going to get started, and we're going to look at objective personality tonight, but I was just kind of giving the preamble to say that, in short, the human design body graph shows you your life force energy. It shows you what obligations and what requirements you have to be alive, to feel vital, that, if you don't use that life force energy, you're not going to get the vitality from that. And then the personality is this passenger that has been around in many different forms and will continue to be around in many more forms, unless you're like Ra and this was your last life, But typically speaking, the personality continues to incarnate again and again and again, and gets to experience many different body graphs, many different limitations, but it retains the same fundamental personality. Okay, so what we're going to be doing today, we're going to be going through what are called the coins in the objective personality system. And the coins, you can be on one side or the other. And so if you'd like to take notes, you can kind of, for each coin, you can put what side you think you're on, and or question mark if you don't know, if you'd like. And then at the end, we will choose someone to type for next week, and anyone who would like to, which I hope will be many of you, can participate in typing them independently, and then we'll kind of share our results next week, so we'll see what we got, because that's part of the fun, is seeing if you get the same results as other people. And that's kind of part of the basis of the objective personality system, is that its originators, Dave Powers and Shannon Renee, were basically trying out an experiment to see if they could independently arrive at the same type. And they actually do, and actually many of their students do as well. Okay, so I have some notes here. I'm just going to let's just start looking at some of the dichotomies. And so these are what they call the coins. And there's a lot of different places to start. One that well, let me see where they start. Overview of the 9 coins. Let's see. Okay, so I wonder what the best place to start would be. I guess we could start with the animals. Feel free to jump in at any point, Marissa, if you have any recommendations or if you have any like OP for beginners kind of thing you'd like to do. I'm mentioning that because Marissa and I know each other from the Objective Personality Group, where we were both members 6 years ago, and we both stayed with the system. So let's start with the animals. The animals are really, I think they're so named because this came out of evolutionary psychology and primate psychology, possibly, or at least that's sort of the mythos of it, where Dave and Shan were observing evolutionary psychology's categorization scheme, where they kind of looked at primates and said they really have 4 different fundamental activities. And these activities are named sleep, play, consume, and blast. And so sleep, play, consume, and blast are the 4 animals. I'll put these in the comments here. Yeah, I did fix the... Oh, sorry, I see there's a couple more comments. I think Teresa may be joining us as well. So, okay, so sleep... Okay, and then, oh, you're saying we should start with observer, decider. Okay, well, let's go over the animals really quick, and then we'll do observer, decider. That's a really good distinction. Absolutely. So, sleep, pet, play, consume, and blast. And so these are 4 kind of fundamental modes, I guess you could say. And so the modes, they're not always easy to see, because this maybe we should have started with a different dichotomy, because maybe this one is a little tricky. But I'll just give some of the basic definitions here. Sleep presents pre-processed information, tending not to stray from what is known. So sleep is also things like self-care and maintaining your sort of inner harmony in a way that people who are missing sleep, like myself, may really ignore and neglect to rest and things like that. So it's not literally sleep, but it can be. I mean, I don't know. I'm missing sleep in this system, and I actually get a lot of rest, so that's not the best heuristic. But I would just say their official definition: presenting pre-processed information, tending not to stray from what is known. Now, this is opposite of play. Play talks things out and discovers things as they are talking and wants to learn as they go. So I have pretty high play. I can verbalize my thought process. I sometimes surprise myself with discoveries that I've made in the process of talking, and I'm like, oh wow, I didn't realize that. Whereas a sleep person is probably going to do a lot more internal processing, and they're probably going to realize and kind of laugh to themselves because in their head they're sort of processing a bunch of stuff. These aren't the best heuristics, unfortunately, but these are the definitions that we have. So sleep, presenting pre-processed information; play, talking things out, discovering as they're talking, and learning as they go. So that first dichotomy, you're going to be either sleep or play. You know, there are really 4 positions these could be in, but the dichotomy is at least you prefer one over the other. So I prefer play over sleep. This was a point of contention for many years, but I eventually acknowledged it once, very recently actually, once changing my understanding of the definition. So I will say it's not the most obvious. It's not the easiest to see, perhaps. But play people can want to keep their options open and basically, having a little more engagement, interaction. Sleep are kind of like, let me unplug from people so I can process internally. I don't want to be to have to verbalize my processing. So I ultimately admitted, okay, I am play because I can verbalize my processing, even like I'm doing here. What do I do when I talk people through how I see something? I'm basically explaining how I see it, whereas a sleep person would be a little more reluctant to explain their rationale. They might just have worked it out internally, and they will present you what they've already processed, but they don't. Then you try to stray into some foreign territory, and they get kind of uncomfortable. Now, the next dichotomy we'll look at is consume versus blast, and consume is described as taking in new information for the self, whereas blast is sharing known information with others. So blast is kind of more plugging into other people and expressing to them. I have blast third. These kind of go in an order, so you have a preference of one side or the other, but you also order them. So just to give an example, I have higher consume than blast. This was also something that took me a while to see, because ultimately, even though I'm happy to blast with you all, I'm happy to share what I know with the tribe, I'm happy to teach, but I wouldn't be happy to do it 40 hours a week. And I would actually be fine taking in human design content and things like that. I'm very specialized in what I consume. Other people tend to just take in a little more, which made it kind of harder for me to see. But at the end of the day, I do take in a lot of new information, and I do it for me, ultimately. Later, I will share that, and I say, oh yeah, objective personality is great. I'm happy to teach it. But, I've been learning it myself for the past 6 years. Now I'm finally teaching other people. For me, they're kind of a little more balanced, kind of like my right hand and my left hand. My right hand, I guess I am a little stronger in consume. It's my dominant, but I experience it still as, I'm not like terrible at blast. So, okay, I think we should go back. Now, first of all, any questions, anything? Oh, and I see Marissa's comment. I had to get that info or knowledge from somewhere, and I'm not a bullshitter, right? So I think that high consume is like I did actually take in a lot of information, whereas a high blast person might pretend to have taken in more information than they really have. I'm like, no, believe me, I exhaustively listened to every raw lecture I could get my hands on. I read every last thing about him, and that is, I think previously in the objective personality system there was some conflation between consume and being a generalist. And now that they've decoupled those concepts a little bit, I can be a very specialist consumer, and that fits more for me. So, okay, so if anyone has any guesses for themselves, I guess, and then we'll go on, but feel free to post your guesses in the chat. Sleep versus play. Are you more comfortable with the familiar, and you kind of maybe have a difficulty with chaos, even, I guess we could call it, or let's see, how do they describe it? Not straying too far from what is known. So do you tend to not stray from what is known and be more comfortable with your pre-processed information, or are you more comfortable talking it out and discovering while you're talking and kind of working it out verbally? Like if you have a bunch of stuff to do in your day, or you've just realized a bunch of things, or a bunch of things have happened, and you kind of, do you just think about it and process it on your own, or do you call a friend? Or do you text somebody and be like, oh my God, you won't believe it, I just realized, blah, 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 because I do that. That's a play thing, right? I realized this and I'm like, oh my God, I got to tell Mike, oh, I got to tell James, oh, I got to tell, Marissa, I had all these realizations about objective personality. So I have this need. The play is basically my need to share and communicate what I have thought, and that helps me process it. I process it through communication. A sleep person doesn't need to do that. A sleep person can process just on their own internally. They can just sit down and kind of go, wow, that was really heavy. I got to process that. I got to think about that. Here's a good example. After a movie, do you just sit down and kind of take it all in and think back to what just happened? Or do you talk it out with your friends and go, that was crazy, and do you remember when that happened? Wasn't that nuts? And how did you feel about this? And what did you think about that move? And that was such a weird decision they made at that point in the movie to do this. That's all play. It's basically a verbal processing or an external processing of the internal world. And I see a comment from Marissa, and working it out with other people, that other people trigger ideas in you. Yeah, that's also play. Now, unfortunately, I do think that play has been so tightly coupled to the preference for friends over flex that, and this is another dichotomy in their system, that basically I do not relate as a very high play person to working things out with other people. I absolutely do not. Most play people do. And I've seen that a lot, where most play people will actually be like, I want to talk to my friend about it. What's funny is, I'm giving the example of the movies and things of how crazy that is and so on. A lot of times I actually don't have any interest in what other people have to say, and part of my play is really just I mean, I shouldn't say it that way, not that I don't have interest, but it's like, it's not like I'm realizing a lot of things while I'm talking to them. I mean, that is part of it. I have to be careful here. There's unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, this Jupiter Uranus conjunction brought a really incredible breakthrough in the system, which is they now, I mean, I guess they started it maybe 6 months or a year ago, but really it's come into the fore, which is the socials, and we might want to leave that for next week just because it does get a little complex. But I mean, it's kind of worth it. Maybe we'll get into the socials. We'll see. Yeah, it's the back and forth. Okay, well that, yeah, I could see that. So play is like a little bit like looking for feedback maybe then, or a back and forth where I go as far as I can until something has to happen where then I'm able to continue going further. Whereas sleep is actually the opposite, where it's interrupted and disrupted by the back and forth, and it doesn't want to have to get the feedback or something like that. So Casey posted that she is play. I agree. I think Casey is lead play and probably missing sleep, like me. And so that's a pretty extreme example of play. So Casey will text me all sorts of cool ideas she had, and I love it because also as a play person myself, that sort of interaction doesn't bother me so much. I mean, there are different subtypes, so that I do get fairly stuck in my thing, and sometimes I don't answer for a while and stuff like that because I'm like less of a context switchy play person. I used to think that all high play people were really good at context switching, and now I realize with the new dichotomies that have been added that that's actually more of a specialist trait, or someone who's really specialized doesn't necessarily want to context switch as much. Possibly. But anyway, we'll leave that for a later discussion. So, okay, so first thing to think about, are you more sleep or play? The other question is basic heuristic. Do you conserve energy or do you spend energy? Like if someone doesn't understand something, I will spend vast amounts of energy trying to explain it. That is a play quality. A lot of sleep people are like, too bad they don't understand it. I wish they did. Like, they just don't. They think to themselves, I wish that person understood it, but they aren't going to expend all the energy to try to get them to understand or to try to verbalize or explain their inner processing. As a play person, I'm happy to do that. You're like, Jonah, walk me through it step by step. Why did you think this? Oh, well, I thought that because I'm like ready to spend a lot of energy explaining my inner process to people, which, a sleep person might not. They might conserve energy more. So yeah, definitely think about if you're a play or a sleep. And then for consume or blast, do you prefer to take in, let's see how they describe it here, taking in new information for the self or sharing known information with others? Okay, now I think observer-decider is a great distinction, being an observer versus being a decider. And this is about what is your core issue, sort of core problem. Do you have thing problems where observers might be worried about getting stuck, worried about going to prison, worried about dying, worried about being trapped? Like observer problems are thing problems where the things are against me. The things have crushed me. I'm worried my car will break down or something like that. Deciders worry about being judged, where you are in the tribe. It's a self versus other thing. It's more of a maybe even potential inferiority complexes around like, do these people really like me or not? Or do I really like them? Or it's really this self-other dichotomy and the worry about being judged, and it's where you are in the tribe really, and kind of the self versus other dichotomy. The observer is more worried about things and worried about getting stuck, and so it's not always true, but like a decider might at a restaurant be like, I had the best server in the world, or my server was really distant and kind of annoying to me, or something like that. Whereas the observer might be noticing like, wow, my server didn't do a great job. I guess they're overbooked. I guess they need more servers. I guess the system's not working right. Like the things are a problem. The things are an issue. The person, well, they're just kind of a result of the things. They're a result of the system. So observer versus decider, I agree that this is a very fundamental dichotomy. And yeah, thank you for that, Marissa, about play and sleep. willing or not willing to expend energy. That was one of the things that ultimately really got me to admit that I'm definitely a play person, because I was like, oh yeah, no, if somebody doesn't understand it, I will spend as much time as they need to help them understand it. I will walk them through it. I will spend my energy, and even because I'm missing sleep, I might even misunderstand and think other people have way more energy than they do. Because I have so much energy, I just assume that everybody can do like 4 jobs and everybody can, endlessly schedule back-to-back meetings and endlessly, go work out and then go garden and then go paint and then go, I just assume everyone's like that. So it's invisible to me. So I send someone a wall of text and they're like, I don't have time to read that. And I'm like, really? I read walls of text. Like, I have the energy to do that, So I kind of, that's the other thing is, it can be hard to see ourselves. So it'll be fun to type other people. We can all type ourselves too and try. I mean, there's different. I'm really glad that we've had this good turnout, and I hope that this is an exciting system for you, as it has been for me, for all of you, because I do find it really valuable, and it'll be fun typing. So okay, so first distinction, I think really before even any of the animals, I think observer versus decider is very important. And this is just from the Subjective Personality website. This is a very, it's this guy, Rob Hallebeck, I believe, and he's just kind of done these really nice high-level synopses of what they are. And so if anyone has any guess of whether they're an observer or decider, I guess if you want, I mean, if we really want to make it scientific, maybe keep your guesses to yourself. Earlier I was saying share them. It really doesn't matter. Either way is fine. But if you want to see what other people think without bias, then feel free to kind of note it yourself, and then later if you want others to type you. At the same time, I don't think it's some sort of death sentence for an accurate typing. Like, especially for us, because we're in the group and we're learning the system, to talk it out, and maybe you're a play person, maybe it helps you to talk it out, right? Maybe, I would say if you're a sleep person, work it all out internally. If you're a play person, feel free to share your thought process. Feel free to explain why you think you might be this or that type. Totally fine. So, okay, observer versus decider. Sleep versus play, and so here's the next one. And so we have examples. Casey is a play person. I'm a play person. We're pretty sure Teresa is a play person. But I mean, at the same time, maybe I shouldn't be spoiling. I don't know, because it's kind of fun to arrive at your own, however we look at it. Okay, consume versus blast. So this is really whether you're more comfortable taking in new information or whether you're more comfortable sharing your known information. Basically, how, and also, is it more about you or the other? So blast will make you more other-focused, and consume will make you more self-focused, in the same way that play makes you more other-focused and sleep makes you more self-focused. So we can see that people who are both sleep and consume are kind of the most self-focused and the most reluctant to do things for others, and that play blast people, if you have both play and blast, as what they call your saviors or your preferred side of that coin, then you might have problems not doing enough for yourself and not taking care of yourself enough because you're just kind of endlessly doing things for others. And there's also a case where, depending what your last one is, that can also kind of work that way. Like, I'm a consume play person, and then I have blast third and sleep last. So because my sleep is my last one, I still look kind of like a play blast person because of how I have access to both of those. Hope that this isn't too complex, but okay. So observers versus deciders. I am an observer, and observers have thing problems. I have a lot of thing problems. It's like all of the big issues in my life have to do with things, have to do with order versus chaos, have to do with logistical issues. I'm worried about my car breaking down. I'm worried about, not having the right venue for the event or things like that. It's like really like, oh, I gotta do my taxes. Like, these are observer. If you're an observer, then you're going to worry about getting stuck, or you're going to worry about what the problems that things could cause. And then you're going to be relatively balanced about people. So people can sometimes be shocked about, like, Jonah, how are you so chill about people? And I'm like, oh yeah, people are good and they're bad. And they're sometimes really good and sometimes really bad and sometimes in the middle. And that's just how people are. Like, people are just kind of in this whole spectrum for me. And I can kind of accept people in that spectrum. And then, oh, but things? Oh my God, things are a nightmare for me. Things are causing me so many problems. And so if you're a decider, you're kind of like, well, I'm worried about where I am in the tribe. Where am I related to other people? How am I, like, it's kind of you have a people problem, so to speak. And we'll look at more of the nuance of that when we drill down into it. But just at a basic level, observers worry about getting stuck. Deciders worry about being judged. I'm not so worried what other people think. I'm an observer. I'm worried that it won't work or something will go wrong or, observer problems. Okay, so now we can drill down, and if you're an observer, there's two kinds of observers. And if you're a decider, there's two kinds of deciders. So for the observers out there, which kind of observer are you? And this is the description from Rob Hallebeck. There are gatherers who want to keep their options open and fear or panic when they cannot keep their options open. This is compared to organizers who work to perfect the old, and they fear or panic when things are not narrowed down to one option. So the organizer is eventually, they want to narrow down so that there's only one thing. And when there's more options, those new options are like dangerous for them, and they represent a lot of chaos for them. And so essentially they're panicked when they're kind of forced to keep their options open. And then a gatherer is panicked when they can't keep their options open. So it's kind of which side of it are you on? And if anyone wants to comment or share any questions here, happy to entertain those. Otherwise, we can keep going. But I will just say this was a large point of contention for my personality because at the time when I was originally getting into the system, a lot of the stereotypes of gatherers did not fit me. So the stereotypes were like, people who don't finish projects, and that's not me. Or people who are addicted to new experiences, that's also not me. But I did have to admit that I do like to have my options open. Even if I do stay at a place for a long time, it's because I want to be there. It's not because I'm forced to, If I do stay in a relationship for a long time, it's because I've chosen it, and so I do keep my options open in the sense that I will commit to the relationship, but I will commit while maintaining the possibility for variety. And it's actually very comforting for me to think, oh, I'm in a relationship, but my partner is like open enough that I might not only be with this person the rest of my life or something like that. Like, that's a comforting thought, even if we are functionally monogamous. Now, I was resistant to being typed as a gatherer at first because I was in very long, very serious, very committed monogamous relationships, and I was deeply committed to specializing in a very particular field and working at the same company for many, many years. My last job I was at for 9 years. I mean, people would describe me based on stereotypes more like an organizer, which is why we have to be careful about stereotypes. So I am, in fact, a gatherer, and I do, in fact, fear or panic when I don't have options open. Like, even though I'm deeply committed to doing the HDHD conference every year, pretty much for the rest of my life, I also know that I don't have a defined ego. I have to respond, and I do have my options open in the sense that I've invested enough in myself that I could do a lot of different things if I wanted to. So we shouldn't look at behavior necessarily as an indicator as much as motivations, which can be harder to see. What is my motivation for investing so heavily in myself? It's so that I have the freedom of choice to choose another option if I so desire. Even though functionally, effectively, I have remained in very committed, stable, long-term relationships, committed, stable, long-term projects. I don't overcommit to a bunch of stuff I don't think is going to be finished. I have a lot of, follow-through, which you might not see in other gatherers, or at least as a stereotype, that gatherers are, not able to commit to things or stick with things for a long time. Well, it's not true. I simply feel a deep sense of comfort knowing that if it didn't work out, I have a safety net and another safety net and another safety net. And so all of these safety nets are keeping my options open for me, even though I will effectively choose one option and just stick with it for as long as I can. Yeah, I have channel of dedication and desire motivation, and so that is going to make me look different than some other gatherers. And I think that was why there was some question about my type. And something that Dave likes to say, one of the founders of the system, is that if you really look at any one person, you're going to find all sorts of contradictions. That what the system is really doing, like we're really zooming in and out, and at the personal level, this is helping us understand our own personalities. But then at the macro level, we can kind of see that from the program's perspective, the evolutionary perspective, it doesn't really care about anyone. It's like evolutionary imperative. It's the genetic imperative. It's basically the program is like, all you people are gatherers, go over here. You're all organizers, go over there. You're all deciders. You're all observers. You're consume people. You're blast people. And by and large, those are the patterns. And really, the program doesn't care about us. I mean, it's expecting us to live, 25 years tops. And like, basically, it's only when you're in your 30s and beyond. I mean, now that we're like mind-centered beings with 84-year lifespan, now we actually have the ability to unfold and go, wow, if I only lived to 25 or 30, I wouldn't have any problems at all. I would have no problems, because the problems only arise later in life, where basically what the genetic imperative had us come here to do is kind of worn out. And now we've been around long enough, we start to have the problems from ignoring the other side, and we want to become more well-rounded people, and we want to experience some of that. And so basically, if you were to actually like zoom in on any one person now, you see all these idiosyncrasies and weirdness, and you're like, Jonah's a gatherer, but he's like stayed in committed long-term relationships, and he's narrowed down all this stuff. He's not supposed to be doing that. He's a gatherer. He's supposed to be this wild party man, or something like that, right? So, but there's all these stereotypes that are probably true at scale, but not true of any one person. And when you actually zoom in, you're actually seeing the uniqueness and the kind of differentiation of each person, and how their behavior might not match their type at all from what you would expect their behavior to be. Their behavior matches them as a person. So just kind of a little point there that, that we shouldn't stereotype. At the same time, we do need definitions, and these are good enough definitions to get started. Are you more panicked when you don't have options? So even if you are in a stable, long-term committed situation, whether it's work or relationship or any of these things, have you maintained the ability to find another job, find another mate, things like that? Do you have safety nets? These are keeping your options open. And organizers who panic when things are not narrowed down to one option, it might look like they have a lot of different things going on in their life and a lot of different interests. I mean, Dave, the founder of the system, he's an organizer, and he's really interested in RC planes, and he's really interested in all these different self-help modalities, and he has these vast, varied interests that might make him look like a gatherer. I never thought so. Most people can tell he's an organizer, but, still, he has interesting openness to things that you might be surprised to see he's open to. But he has actually narrowed down to one option. He has put all of his eggs in the basket of his relationship with his partner, and doing the objective personality system together, and doing their one service that they offer. Like, just the fact that I do the high desert human design and I'm doing signpost is already like more gatherer than if I had just narrowed down to like, this is my thing. This is my one thing. So, but I do narrow down quite a bit, and I think it's because I'm a pretty specializing person compared to some of the generalists out there, and so that can also make it, a little more nuanced. Okay, so for the observers, if you're an observer, if you have thing problems, if you are more worried about being trapped or worried about things turning on you, are you a gatherer? Are you an organizer? That's just for the observers out there. Now, if you're a decider, there's going to be two kinds of deciders as well. And I guess for some reason he didn't use the names here, but I believe collaborators and individualists are the terms mostly being used. So here's the two kinds of deciders. There are extroverted deciders, who want to respect others without giving weight to what the self believes, and those are collaborators. So they're basically overvaluing other people's opinions, overvaluing, trusting that somebody else has the answer, trusting that other people kind of en masse may know better than them and things like that, or the individualist who works to perfect the self without giving weight to what the tribe believes. And so this is actually very key because, I won't say for certain, and I don't want to influence people's typing of Ra too much, but I get the individualist sense from Ra, and I think some of that individualism may have made its way into human design. Which, I think is wonderful. It's empowering and so on, but also it could lead people to imagine that manifestors are individualists, or to imagine that individual circuitry makes you automatically an individualist. And if you're a collaborator with a lot of individual circuitry, you might be kind of thrown off by that. Question from Casey, can we lean both observer and decider? Well, these are coins, so one is going to be above the other, but she feels like she's a decider, but fears judgment out of the loss of things. Well, there is going to be, I'll put it this way. It's a good question of how, it depends how you weight it. You could say that you're an organizer who also, not you particularly, but that somebody is an organizer who has like secondary individualist, or that they're a collaborator with secondary gatherer, things like that. Like, you could kind of try to describe it that way, but it gets into the question of how you weight the animal stacks, the weighting of them, and like how much value do you give. There are different attempts to do that, but it still wouldn't be that you're an observer and a decider. It would be that you're one type of observer, you're like similar to one type of observer, and you're similar to one type of decider. Now, we actually know your function stack from typing the other day, so if you don't mind, I can share that, and at least what we think, the animal stack rather, and we have typed Casey as a gatherer, and we've typed her as a play, blast, consume person. So because she's play and blast, as a gatherer, I would think that she would have a strong collaborator, extroverted decider way of being. So even though she is a gatherer who wants to keep her options open, she would also want to respect others, giving more weight to them, and fearing the judgment of others. Right, so that would be kind of the answer to your question, would be like, you would be primarily a gatherer, but then you would have collaborator tendency in that sense. And there is a 10-to-1 rule, they used to say. The extroverted deciders, the collaborators, they have to check with 10 people before making a big life decision, because they want to make sure that the 10 people approve of that. So new relationship, make sure their partner likes the person. New job opportunity, make sure that their mentors and friends and parents and loved ones approve of that job. So the collaborator is like trying to make sure and check. The 10-to-1 rule for the collaborator is it would take 10 people to approve of a decision before they'll do it. Not literally, but this is kind of the idea. Now, the 10-to-1 rule for an individualist is it takes 10 people telling them they're wrong to actually take that seriously. So someone like Ra, if you were an individualist, or, if you imagine, I don't want to give away too many of the people in the human design community that I've already typed, because I want to give others an opportunity to type them on their own. But, if you're an individualist, other people kind of have to keep telling you, hey, you should reconsider that decision. Are you sure that's a good decision? That might not be the smartest thing to do. And the first person, you're like, yeah, whatever. The second, yeah, whatever. And finally 10 people tell you, and you're like, okay, fine, I'll consider another option. Geez, So the individualist kind of has this 10-to-1 rule of like so overvaluing their own conclusion that they so disregard other people's conclusions that, it can be, oh yeah, no worries at all, Marissa. Yeah. And we're probably going to wrap up pretty soon here. So we'll be doing this every week, and I hope this is interesting enough that everyone will keep coming back if you find it exciting. I certainly do. So if you are a decider, you're going to kind of either overvalue others and undervalue your own beliefs, kind of over-investing in in them. Now, either way, it's an inferiority complex, right? The individualist who overvalues themselves, you might be like, how do they have an inferiority complex? But there is this, like, I don't think observers get the classic inferiority complex. I think deciders do. Collaborators and individualists. And the collaborators, this inferiority complex is like, maybe I don't actually have something of value, and maybe I, am not actually good. And how do I know I'm good? Other people need to tell me I'm good because it's through their approval of me and validation of me that I know I'm good because I've actually done something to help them. And if I don't help them, bad things will happen. And then individualist is kind of like afraid of, they have the opposite inferiority complex. They have like a chip on their shoulder that's like comes out as this overcompensation of like, nobody knows anything and I'm the only person who thinks for myself. I might be one-eyed, but you all are blind. This kind of individualist look of like, they're just like really so overvaluing what they believe and undervaluing what others believe. Now, I will just tell one story here because it can be hard to tell collaborator versus individualist. So I was talking to a couple, husband and wife, and the husband's an organizer and the wife is an individualist. So he's pretty balanced. If you're an organizer or if you're a gatherer, you're pretty balanced between individual overall. Like, yeah, you might lean to one side. Casey, we were talking about how you lean to the collaborator side. But overall, you're pretty balanced between collaborator and individualist. You're pretty like, yeah, I can work with people. Yeah, I can do it by myself. Yeah, I value what you think. Yeah, I also value what I think. Like, there's there's going to be a skew, but it's still not as extreme, right? Well, anyway, this couple I'm talking to, they got into a real disagreement about it because I was describing the dichotomies and I was saying, individualists tend to undervalue what other people think, undervaluing others' opinions. And she's an individualist and she took affront with that. Well, you can see where this is going. I mean, she undervalues my opinion too. I'm a person and I'm one of the people whose opinion she undervalues, right? So, and her husband also. And so she goes, well, that's not true at all. I was at a party and everyone thought I was an idiot and I overvalued their opinion and I cried that night because of how sad I was at how everyone made me feel because they didn't like me and they thought I was dumb. And then her husband's like, that's not true. Those people love you. Like, they're your coworkers. And remember when they threw that party for you? He's like giving all these counter examples of how much, they actually care about her. And she's like, that's all just for show. They actually can't stand me. Like, I know that these people do not like me and they think I'm dumb. And he's like, no, they don't. And I'm like, really? Is that even possible? Like, how could someone think you're dumb? Like, you seem so smart and funny and, and the point is that she was undervaluing my opinion, undervaluing her husband's opinion, undervaluing everyone else's opinion. She had come to the conclusion that they think she's dumb. And no amount of convincing could get through to her. 10 people would have to grab her by the shoulders and be like, no, those people think you're cool. And then she'd be like, they do? Really? But it's just like the individualist, it's so invisible to them that she was like, I'm not an individualist. There's no way I'm an individualist. I overvalue what everyone thinks of me. And I'm like, you literally don't even value what I'm saying right now. How could you value what anyone else thinks? And by the way, she was a self-identified INFP, which makes her an individualist, and I think she was correct in her type assessment. For those of you who know Myers-Briggs, the individualists are any of the IP types. So, I mean, she was an INFP, she was an individualist, and I was like explaining it to her, and she's like, that's absolutely not true. It's exactly opposite. I overvalue what everyone thinks. And I'm like, literally, you are demonstrating right now how little you value what other people think. So that's why it gets a little bit complex. So, okay, here are, if you're having a hard time figuring out if you're a decider or an observer. Decider words: opinion, allowed, judge, and respect. So, like, I'm allowed to do that. Like, I would never say that. I'm an observer. Who would allow me? I don't talk about respect much. Like, they didn't respect that. This person has no respect for the system. Or I just don't even think in that way. Well, that's just your opinion. I never even use the word opinion. It's like, this is the way it is. I just kind of talk about, things as they are. And then judging. I don't really think about judging as much either. Observer words: stuck, forever, won't work, and trap. So these are the kind of words I use. It's a trap. Don't go for it. Or that won't work. Or, it'll be like that forever. Or, don't get stuck on that. These are the observer words that I am very familiar with. So, yeah, we do have more dichotomies. I think this is probably good for now. I don't want to overwhelm people with the dichotomies. So I think what we should do is pick someone to type next week, and because we've only done like half the dichotomies so far, just type them according to what we've already studied. Or if you want to on your own, follow the link that I've shared and kind of go deeper into it. You can try their full type. I think we should wait for Ra. I think Ra will be a good one. Who do we want to type? We could type Alokanon Diaz. Oh, we could type, who we should type is Mike. Michael Steenbeck-Litvin. Let's type him. I'm pretty good on his type, and I have a pretty clear idea of his type. It'd be interesting to see what other people come up with. There's a lot of videos of him. You can hear him tomorrow and Thursday on Surfing the Zeitgeist. And if you're brand new to the system, just type him according to what we've looked at. Is he sleep or is he play? Is he consume or is he blast? Is he an observer? Is he a decider? If he's an observer, is he a gatherer or an organizer? If he's a decider, is he a collaborator or an individualist? And I think that that's enough for now, just kind of going through these dichotomies. If you do feel the gumption to consume a lot of objective personality content and you want to type him further than those dichotomies, you certainly can. I will also go ahead and share a nice database that they have which shows some of the type codes of people that they've already typed. Some of them are speculative, most of them are official, and then basically you can use this so that if you kind of have an idea of what somebody's type is, you can compare them and kind of see what their company would be then. If you're like, oh, this person is this type, then you can kind of see, oh, it would be the same type as that person. Well, let's cross-reference it. Let's watch an interview with that person. Do they have a similar way of talking? Do they have a similar approach to things? Do they have a similar lifestyle and so on? And so that can be a nice cross-reference. So thank you all for attending. I hope this has been an enjoyable introduction. I'm really excited to do this every week, and I'm also available on Signpost throughout the week. Anytime, feel free to shoot me a message, tag me in Maine, ask any questions you might have, any comments, anything you thought. If you want to share what type you think you might be, or say like, I think I might be play, is this an example of play? I think I might be blast, or I could be this or that. Then, go right ahead. And there are also some type rules which we'll go over. You can also discover them on your own, but like if you are a gatherer, you can only be consumer play lead. You can't be a gatherer and also a blast lead. You could have blast second. So I think it's still valuable to type to do the coins separately. But then if you come up with something that doesn't make sense, if you're like, this person's a gatherer and I think that they are, you can still figure out the type code from it. They just can't be lead blast. They could have secondary blast or something, right? So there's a bunch of rules there. We'll go into those rules, but more fun to just jump right in. Maybe that's my play talking. Jump in, try it out, figure it out, play with it, and I will see you all next week. Thanks again. Have a great night. Thanks, Emma. Yeah, Casey, James, everyone. Liz, Teresa, awesome. Great seeing you.